Hi everybody, this is Bo from Aircraft and Pixels. Welcome to the third update on my Spitfire Mark I build. I've been recently corrected. I guess it's just a Spitfire 1, not a Mark I, by somebody who seems to know what they're talking about on Facebook. I don't know. But anyway, this is the old tool, 1/24th scale Airfix Spitfire Mark I, released originally in 1970. Quickly to recap, I built this kit when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old. It's a birthday present from my grandmother, and I'm going to build it again. I've had it on the shelf for a long time. It's my boxing is actually the original boxing, and I've modified it somewhat extensively. So yeah, so we'll get into that in a second. But before we do, so I've had the kind of part of what spurred this whole thing on is this new tool kit, which doesn't even fit. The box is so big and my camera is so close that it doesn't really even fit in. But this is the new tool Mark IX, which a lot of people are calling Kit of the Year, at least of 2022. I believe it was released in December. I've had this on back order since about then, and it finally arrived just a couple weeks ago. Like you can see, it's a nice massive box, a different form factor than the old kit. Kind of a big, I'd say that's 5 inches thick, and probably 8 inches by, I don't know, 24 inches, something like that. But anyway, a nice big box of parts. And there's been lots of unboxing videos and even lots of build videos already of this this kit. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm just going to try and keep this in context with the old build that I'm doing. And just a little bit of comparison and contrast, and just sort of points of reference too. So this kit is, I've opened it a couple of times and looked inside, but it's basically exactly the way it came, and we're going to change that. So right off the bat, here's the first thing that's visible when you open up the kit. It's the upper surfaces of the wing. And they've taken a hint from sort of, what everyone complains about the old kit. And very prominently, there's the spar right here, which is going to make up the structure of the kit. I'm going to move the box out of the way so we can look at the stuff a little bit better. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and snip some of the stuff up. Now, it'd be tempting, I think, to some to maybe backdate this Mark IX to a Mark I. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but especially the wings, there's a lot of work to do because, this is the 2 Browning, 1 Hispano armed wing. And there's just a lot of things to change to make this into a 4 Browning wing. And I'll do the usual close-ups, but the surface detail is really pretty nice on this kit. You can kind of compare it to the old kit, and, it's the old kit, it's not as good, but it's not horrible. The rivet detail looks really, really nice on this new tool. And just to sort of have a look at sort of how the profiles compare, you can see they match up pretty well. Of course, this is top wing to top wing, but anyway, yeah. So old and new. Spar. All right, so the next thing in the box, and I like the way that they've just used simple brown paper to separates these large main sprues. No need to have these bagged in plastic. So here's the lower wing. I'm going to go ahead and snip this one out too. And they have, you know, for their purposes, it makes a lot of sense that they've molded the wingtip separately, because the Mark 9s, of course, had clipped wing versions, as did the Mark 5s. So it allows them in one boxing to cater to both versions. Now, I've already modified my lower wing a little bit, but we can at least have a quick comparison and see how they stack up. Sort of the one thing that I really like that I'm going to have to address in my version is the sort of lack of these recesses in this wing for the radiator. And I think there was something similar for the oil cooler. Of course, on the Mark 9, it had 2 radiators, and they moved the oil cooler out of that position. Sort of immediately you can see that they have not molded the flaps integrally. I can't seem to say that word today. With the rest of the wing, which is nice. Even if you leave them up like they would be most of the time, it's still nice to have that a separate part, I think. And, you know, we've kind of remarked before about how this floppy Mark 1 wing really kind of just, I mean, it has a little bit of dihedral, maybe. But it's more pronounced, certainly, in the new kit, and the spar is going to go a long ways to keeping that something that's not an issue anymore. So that's the lower wing. So here's the main fuselage pieces, and they kind of approached this the way I'm doing it. Basically, they've truncated it at the frame 5/firewall, and they have not cut off the tail completely, but they have, they have demarked it at station 19, just leaving a little bit on. So it would be pretty easy to make this tail detach at station 19 if you were as crazy as I am to think that would be a good idea. Most people wouldn't, but I'm not most people. Now, like the original Airfix 1/24 scale Spitfire, the fillets for the wings are integral. Again, that word that I'm not sure I'm saying right anymore. They are molded as one with the fuselage sides, which I kind of object to a little bit. But at least they have addressed the way that it affects the interior space, because the interior space, they've provided a lower interior side and kind of a floor, which is going to make the height of the floor kind of inaccurate, because really the floor is this bottom surface of the wing, and so there's going to be an extra layer, but most people would never know or care about any of that. Again, this right here is actually the inside of this this surface of this very thin piece of fillet right here. So again, they've kind of taken some liberties. I think like most kits, I haven't looked at how the new Kotari 1/32 scale Mark 1 goes together, but I'm thinking that they probably it's probably similar. I haven't ordered that one yet, but I'm definitely going to, just because I want to support those guys, and it looks like a cool kit. So these are sort of the major pieces, and you know, one of the things I just wanted to say about this is I was a little bit afraid that once I opened this box and took a look inside, that I would completely lose interest in this old version, this old 1970s tool, which, you know, comparatively is has its issues, but you know, it's still I think can make a pretty nice model when it's all said and done. So yeah, if anything, I'm kind of more inspired to keep going with this nutty project of mine. So anyway, I haven't really scratched the surface of this box. You know, we're just maybe like an inch into it, and you know, there's just a lot of stuff. I'm just going to snip out a couple more parts that are kind of germane to what I'm talking about today, and then we're going to go on and have a look at where the build is. So let's do that. You know, here's and kind of interesting, and I'm not going to open up this right now. Hopefully this shows up on video, but they've kind of done this old school thing, and they've molded the instrument panel face as clear, as solid clear moldings like they did in the old days. So that's kind of interesting, and actually something I kind of like. Yeah, and here's the wingtips. They're all solid clear pieces, so that you can get the wingtip light detail without being impossibly fiddly, I guess. And there's mirrors and stuff. So anyway, good stuff. Here's what makes this thing a Mark 9 and not a Mark 5 or a Mark 1, and that's the extra length of the of the upper cowling, and of course the side cowlings too. But you know, they had the extra long motor in the Mark 9s with the extra supercharger stage and stuff. Maybe that started with a Mark 5. I don't know. It's late. So anyway, the other sprue bag I wanted to open is the parts that are the interior detail, because that's speaks directly to the stuff I'm working on right now with the old build. Specifically, this sprue. So here's the tub sides, what I'm calling the tub. I mean, I think that's not really accurate in any way. Here are the sides of the fuselage interior. I'm just doing a real quick and dirty job of cutting these things out, but hopefully not doing anything that's going to make this hard to clean up later. It's fun cutting plastic off the trees, eh? And like my friend the Red Baron used to say, a guy in the World War I forums who went by the name of Red Baron, you know, don't worry, just start cutting, and then you don't have to worry about wrecking your collectible kit. And and this is all about the Wingnut Wings kits that everyone was a little bit freaked out about. You know, the value of the kits and in their unbuilt state, which is kind of silly, right? So anyway, here are the fuselage, the tub there. And I'm going to cut out a couple of these formers. Interestingly, they've molded the former 8 and the instrument panel back as one piece. They're really not one piece in the real plane, but I guess that's being a bit of an anorak. And we want 12. And we want 11. And we want, this is the lower part of frame 9. And the lower part of frame 10. So these are all parts that I'm working up right now in my build on the old kit. And I'm going to compare these things later. Earlier I did show you the instruction manual for the the old tool kit, and this is a book. I mean, it literally is a book. It's great, and the molding quality is really pretty nice. I can't vouch for the fit yet. I just snipped these things out as you saw, so hopefully this thing fits together better than the old tool stuff does. But yeah, there's 244 steps versus about 18 steps in the old kit, so significantly more detail, and that's what I love. But also the other thing I wanted to say is oh, here's something else we wanted to grab. I wanted to grab the seat bits because that's something I'm working on now too. It's not like there's no room for improvement, which, I mean, if you don't want to improve the kit and add super detail, that's fine. You just want to build it out of the box, But I enjoy, as you may be able to tell by now, upgrading stuff and just sort of going that extra level of detail. So yeah, here's some, this will also sort of come up in a bit. The seat details, these are the left and right side. Hopefully there's a handle for the seat height adjustment mechanism. They've molded, it's kind of interesting how they've molded this. There must be a seat bottom too that I've missed. But anyway, yeah, so new tool. Airfix Mark 9. So picking up where we left off, as of last episode, the fuselage walls were thinned to about where I want them to be. I said less than 4 millimeters. It's really, or 0.4 millimeters. It's really less than 0.5 millimeters. I've since hit them with a little bit of checking primer. On this side's pretty much done. This side still has some areas here behind former, I guess that's former 14 actually, that look like the cat chewed it up. And so I'm going to hit that a little bit more. It's getting a little bit weak right here where there's this panel line in front of where former 8 is. So I'm going to apply a little splint with a popsicle stick to keep that from, to support that while I'm pounding on this with sandpaper. So yeah, so I'm just using this great stuff. This is a great secret weapon. This double-sided masking tape. It's plenty strong for things like this. I use it all the time. I recommend it as part of your toolkit. And I'm just going to apply it to a popsicle stick. I'm going to save the rest of it. if I can. No need to waste it. All right, do the rest of the X-Acto knife. So, there. Save this for later. And to get this stuff off without destroying stuff, isopropyl alcohol works good to soften the adhesive. Turpentine works as well. So I'm just going to stick this right here to give this a little bit of support so that while I'm working on this with the sanding stick, it doesn't, I don't break this, because I would not be the end of the world, but it certainly would make things more complicated. So then for the sanding stick, I'm using, I think I got these from Florey's. Nothing special about that. But there's a fairly coarse, I think it's number 80 grit, that for doing most of the, the hard work, number 80 grit works. Don't need to use a medium like water when you're doing this step. And again, I've hit it with checking primer so I can see where the high and low spots are. So I'm just going to attack this area because I want this to feather from about 0.7 millimeters, 0.6, 0.5, something like that. Anyway, fairly thin here to this rear area of the fuselage, which is going to be probably 1 millimeter thick when it's done. That should be fine for the detail that's visible from the battery door and the radio door. But it should give the illusion of complete detail and fuselage thickness, and you shouldn't be able to tell. So anyway, that's the hope. This there's two sides to this. There are different grits. I think one's 100, one's 80. I'm trying to be consistent with the 80 grit. Basically, I cut these down, after working on this for, a few minutes when they start to get loaded up. You can also clean them in terp or water to get some of the loaded up material out of the sanding stick. But this actually, and I've done these trenches were cut with a Dremel tool, and you can see that, again, they look bad, but this actually cleans up pretty fast. So we're just going to keep on feathering this down with this 80 grit, trying to get these kind of ugly trenches cut out. I'm going to have to go back here with a Dremel along this top edge to thin this to where I want it to be. I think right along this spine, I probably want it to be about, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter or so. But most of this, though, I can get with just the sanding stick and some patience. Patience is your weapon. I always tell people I don't have a lot of skill, but I do have patience. It's going to be feathered pretty nicely. And again, most of this is not going to show. It's going to be covered up. I'll show you in a second with kind of a applique. From here back, it will show, but it is only going to be visible through these small hatches. So the thickness and the smoothness, well, we'll make it smooth, but the thickness will not be apparent. not as apparent as it will be in the more visible cockpit area. So you can see that's starting to get about where we want it. So that's getting a little better. Again, we're going to use this thickness gauge to find out where we're at. And I'm also going to mark up, basically, that's the wrong tool. Basically going to draw a line right about where former 14 is, and everything back beyond this former is going to be this is no, doesn't matter. It's going to be, the target is going to be less than 1 millimeter thick, and from here forward we're looking for 0.7 millimeter or less, so less than 0.7. And so we're going to see how we're doing. That's 0.4 there. That's 0.8. So I'm just going to mark where it's fat. Just put a little pencil mark. We got 0.8 there. 1.3 here. So might have to go in there with a Dremel. I think everything ahead of this line is going to be fine. That's 0.3. That's 0.4. That's 0.5. It's 0.4.5. Otherwise, no, it's 0.45. This is pretty thick here. Again, I'm going to have to hit this with a Dremel. That's 1.3. That's 1.5. It's like going to the dentist, right? This is 1.6. 0.7. That's good. 0.6. So I think everything ahead of, let's say, about this line is fine. I think it's just this area. And really, this is going to be kind of a feathered region. So, you know, probably, so this is where, so former 12 is here, 13 is here, 14 is about here. So this area is really going to go, I really have this in the wrong place. It's really going to be feathering from 0.7 to less than 1 millimeter from here to here. So I'm on the right track here. So I'm just going to keep going for a little while. I'm not going to do all this today, but just going to keep grinding away. This actually goes pretty fast. And just take my time, grind away. That's why they call this a pastime, right? So this is like probably the 6th iteration of the tub I've done, and it's not that different to the one I showed in the last installment. The big difference is I've added these bosses with these captured 1.3 millimeter thread nuts, so that like with the fuselage sides themselves, I can establish a very precise fit for the way these parts all go together. And yeah, that helps a lot when putting this together and fitting the parts in and stuff. So that's what's new with the tub. I still have to do, I have recesses for frames 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I still have to add 7, 6, and 5, which is the main bulkhead that carries the wing spar. And then behind 12, 13, and 14, and this is the area where the oxygen, actually the oxygen tanks are here, and the RT set is in here somewhere. So yeah, so this is still very much a development piece, and of course in the final iteration of this tub. There'll be exterior detail, but there'll also be, we'll get rid of these and just replace them with maybe little pins or something that will meet up with these corresponding holes so this thing all locks together correctly. So that's what's going on with that. And so the other thing that I've been doing is working on these fuselage frames. In the last episode I just had dummies, and now I have frames besides frame 12, which I had last time. I've got frame 8, 9, 10, and 11. And they're all, it's kind of interesting, they're all very different. The originals were, in most cases, like frame 11. So this is the, this is frame 8. This is the frame directly below the instrument panel and slightly ahead of it. And this sort of large opening right here is where the pilot's feet go through to reach the rudder pedals. And it fits on the plane. It's just about right here. So this in real life was made of a whole bunch of flat pieces of sheet metal, all very thin, but it's basically a sandwich kind of construction. And I've really tried to mimic that with this 3D printed version so that you can kind of see that it's got this inside dimensionality. So that's frame 8, sort of for comparison. Here's how it was depicted in the original kit. The instrument panel is molded as one piece with it, which is fine because they are fairly close together, although they are not actually attached in the actual aircraft, excuse me. And just kind of maybe as an interesting comparison, here's what this lovely resin, cast resin version of it is in the Buchan pieces. So you can see we're all kind of on the same page. Yeah. So that's frame 8, and that fits here in the tub, like so. So behind that is frame 12, frame 9. Behind that is frame 9. What is going on in my head? Frame 9. So this is, again, it's sort of interesting that it's so different. This doesn't have a whole bunch of lightning holes in it, except for in these in this sort of reinforcing piece right here. It does have a little boss that's sort of angled slightly obliquely for the aileron control pulley, and it also has these holes here which held spherical bearings for the rudder pedal control rods. I haven't yet completely designed the structure that supports the rudder pedals and the control column. I did show you the rudder pedals that I've created in an earlier video, but those will all get integrated into this. So that's frame 9, and that goes in the tub right here. Okay, and frame 9 was not represented in the original Airfix kit. It was just sort of kind of hinted at in the molding on the cockpit sides, which of course have long been obliterated. Frame 9 is wonderfully depicted by Buchan. a lot of it is photo etch detail that gets added on, and which I have not done, but here's his version of it. And imagine the whole bunch of this extra photo etch detail gets bent and superimposed on this, so that would make a lovely little piece. And then we have frame 10, which is doesn't have any extra purpose besides just being this sort of U-shaped frame. What's sort of interesting about it is it's kind of completely Swiss cheesed with holes. Again, it's probably not going to show up in the video camera, but this is I've depicted this with two very thin, they're like 0.15 millimeter walls with the holes all in the right place. And yeah, this is basically just a reinforcement that is more or less under, well, it's sort of right under the pilot's seat, or right in front and under the pilot's seat. And that fits here in the tub, like so. And then the final one that I've done in this last period of time is frame 11, which is kind of a major framework in the plane. The rear mounting points for the rear wing spars are attached to the outside of frame 11, which I have not depicted yet. And also we have these mounting points for the seats. On top are these sort of rifle bolt kind of slides that form a quick release for the seat proper. So yeah, that's frame 11. For comparison, here's the resin Buchan rendition of the same. You can see where I did not copy this, but you can see we're working from the same drawings. Again, Espen has added lots of photo etch detail to add, for these very thin parts that I've actually just printed with my 3D print. You can't do this in resin. You can't print things that are hollow like this and get away with it. That's one of the beauties of 3D printing, and I'm taking advantage of that. So anyway, that's what these his version and my version look like. Here's the kit version. This has the armor plate for the headrest mounted integrally, however you say that, and yeah, it's a little bit blobby, and it's kind of has a interesting and weird interpretation of this seat framework. But again, they weren't really super. The outside of the kit is quite good, but the inside stuff, it seems like they kind of phoned a lot of that in. Although this is better than many of the details on the old kit, and not faulting it. It's just kind of different standards back then. So yeah, this fits here in the tub. Like so. And then we have the frame that we've already made from last time, frame 12, which I have not changed yet, although it is due for some upgrades. I've kind of started to nail down where the longeron on the side, which is sort of a major structural piece, actually is in relationship to all these parts, and I have it off. I'm just off a little bit with frame 12, so I'm going to have to do some adjustments there. And like I said, I don't have the recesses yet for 5, 6, and 7, or 13 and 14, which I will do in the sort of the next iteration of this. So that's how this goes together. Now for the interior walls, right now we just have this raw sort of ground down plastic. But what I'm going to do is So I've created, I've printed these very thin sort of appliques for the interior wall. I'm not pretty sure I have this right. I get these confused because they look nearly identical left to right, but this will be close. So this fits on in between frame 11 and 12 like that. I've put a little bit of temporary adhesive on it so that it will stay in place while we put this together. So yeah, that's, oops, well, it's stuck to the wrong thing. Yeah, that's how it's going to look for this one section. I'll have similar applique for between 12 and 13. 13 goes here, and then between 13 and 14. And then beyond this, I'll make I will print the longerons, but sorry, the frames, but the longerons will be made of you know, stock plastic stuff. Yeah, so that's how that goes together. Now for the rest of the interior of the cockpit, what I've done is I've created sort of a an upper tub, if you will, a shell that fits like this. It fits like sort of like this. I might have to do, yeah, there we go. It used to be sort of jiggled into place a little bit, but yeah, it goes together like that. And then this whole thing forms kind of, that's kind of the meat in the sandwich, or yeah. So the whole thing goes together like this. And find some screws, and we'll screw this thing all together and have a look at what it all looks like put together. So screws are here. So here's what it looks like with the tub all assembled and the formers in. Can even fit the kit windscreen. Actually fits perfectly still. Well, almost perfectly. A little bit of a gap right there. I've also stuck on the air scale the back of the instrument panel, which by happy accident fits just about perfectly. This is just a result of us working from the same drawings, years apart and miles away from each other, but you know, this upper hoop shape of the Spitfire, which I basically didn't refer to the kit to get this shape. I referred to drawings, and I'm pretty sure that's what Airscale did too, or maybe not, but the kit's pretty accurate because this all just sort of goes back together pretty nicely when it's all sort of put back together with the parts that, you know, I've designed from old drawings. You know, taking some measurements off the kit, but not too many. But anyway, I'm pretty pleased with the way this goes together. These parts are all really lightweight, but the result is a pretty robust feeling, you know, piece of stuff. Yeah. All right, so yeah, now on to the pilot seat. So here's what the kit pilot seat looks like. It's not very accurate at all. It does have the seat adjustment handle on it. It has this little framework right here, and actually it's supposed to, this part is supposed to attach directly to the armor plate that is fixed to the back of it, but for comparison purposes I left that off. But, you know, besides the shape of it, which is not super right, it's also crazily out of scale, and we can kind of see that if we look at the assembled Mark IX seat. Now this is just thrown together with temporary adhesive, so it's pretty fragile, but this is a pretty good rendition of the seat with the adjustment mechanism. And back there are these two, they call them compensators. They're basically spring-loaded cylinders that make up for the weight of the pilot and his gear, while he's using this ratcheted lever to adjust the seat up and down to one of 6 positions. They actually only have 4 notches in their rendition, but hey, who's counting? And yeah, and the shape for the Mark IX seat, it is pretty correct. And actually, you'll see that it kind of matches the shape of the seat in the original kit, except the size is just a lot closer. In profile, they're about the same, but overall the width is a lot different. Maybe this is to accommodate the pilot figure. I did some measuring on the pilot figure. This is a fairly tall person for 1940, but I think he worked out that he's about 6.5 feet tall, which would have been a tall bloke, but not extremely tall. But actually, you can kind of see that he's got lots of there's lots of butt room in this seat. Whereas in this, in the new Mark IX seat, it's a little bit snugger, which I think is probably more characteristic of the Spitfire, which is widely known as being a bit of a tight fit inside. So anyway, these are these 2 examples, but I've decided to kind of go a little bit further with this and come up with my own 3D printed version. Which consists of 16 printed parts, and I've done what I could do to make this really thin. I've also made the flare rack noticeably hollow. That's what this thing is in front. This thing with the 9 holes in it. It's to hold cartridges for a very pistol or flare gun. They sort of depicted it in the old kit, but it's not to scale too much. And I think it's proper that they left it off on the Mark IX, because I think, so this is the later, so the original Mark I Spitfire, the Spitfire 1, the seat was made of completely metal fabricated, riveted together, I guess in May 1940, so I guess still in production of the Mark I's, but transitioning to the Mark II's, they started making the seat proper out of what they called synthetic resin bonded paper. It's this sort of brown paper plasticky kind of stuff that apparently was lighter and stronger. But it wasn't, most of the Mark I's were not fitted, or maybe none of them were. I don't know. I think different people will say different things. But anyway, so that's what this depicts. And apparently the flare rack was fairly unusual after the SRBP seats were around. So, but as far as I can tell, the all-metal seat, the flare rack, was part and parcel of the seat design. It's made out of the same sheet metal that the seat is itself. So anyway, that's the seat, and I've made it so the seat can move up and down now. I just had to repair this handle a little bit, so I don't know if it still works. I hope it does. So there's a pawl that this push button on the front of the adjustment arm actually pushes in and out, and it does catch on the little catches. I'm not sure though that I can move it, because I just repaired this thing and it's pretty fragile. I'm about to break it, I think. Oh no, there it goes. Yeah, so you can see that the whole seat, the seat adjustment handle goes up and down. Just like the original does. And if I hadn't just broken this thing, pushing in this button will release this little wire catch that engages with the ratchet plate. And yeah, so that's how it works. So I've made this sort of a kit. So here are the raw seat elements. This is a bunch of parts, including a example of frame 11, which I'm going to pop off. But these are the frameworks, the support framework in back. And then there's just a lot of little parts. Here's another support framework. So these are a bunch of adjustment arms. And these are the little upper arms on the side. They're different left to right. The one on the port side, the side with the door, there it's actually a turnbuckle. Not really quite sure. I guess maybe just to keep the whole thing in adjustment in terms of squareness. Yeah. So it's kind of a fiddly thing, but I put together PDF instructions, and I'm making these available to my Patreon subscribers. So if you're interested, check out my Patreon page. The kit starts at $20, depending on what level you subscribe at. So if you're interested, yeah, check it out. This is kind of fiddly. But when it's in properly, it goes, drops in the little receiver holes in the bottom of Former 11, like I showed earlier, and the top of it catches with the rifle bolt latches. Okay, so let's get that back. And fiddle, fiddle, fiddle. Yeah, voila. There it is. So that's it for now. Next time we're going to work on the cockpit door and more interior stuff, getting the control systems in place for the rudder pedals and the control column, and who knows what else. Thanks so much for watching, and like and subscribe. And again, if you are really interested in this crazy stuff, check out my Patreon page. Thanks again.